Hello, squirrels. Time to read. Chapter 20, The Way It Often Happens. Anne rose betimes the next morning and blithely greeted the fresh day when the banners of the sunrise were shaken triumphantly across the pearly skies. Green Gables lay in a pool of sunshine flecked with the dancing shadows of the poplar and willow. Beyond the land was Mr. Harrison's wheat field, a great wind-rippled expanse of pale gold. The world was so beautiful that Anne spent 10 blissful minutes hanging idly over the garden gate, drinking the loveliness in. After breakfast, Marilla made ready for her journey. Dora was to go with her, having been long promised this treat. "Now, Davy, you try to be a good boy and don't bother Anne," she straightly charged him. "If you're good, I'll bring you a striped candy cane from town." For alas, Marilla had stooped to the evil habit of bribing people to be good. "I won't be bad on purpose, but supposing I'm bad accidentally," Davy wanted to know. "You'll have to guard against accidents," admonished Marilla. "And if Mr. Shearer comes today, get a nice roast and some steak. If he doesn't, you'll have to kill a fowl for dinner tomorrow." Anne nodded. "I'm not going to bother cooking any dinner for just Davy and myself today," she said. That cold ham bone will do for a noon lunch. And I'll have some steak fried for you when you come home at night. I'm going to help Mr. Harrison haul Dulce, Dulse, this morning," announced Davy. "He asked me to, and I guess he'll ask me to dinner too. Mr. Harrison is an awful kind man. He's a real sociable man. I hope I'll be like him when I grow up. I mean, behave like him. I don't want to look like him, but I guess there's no danger, for Mrs. Lynde says I'm a very handsome child. Do you suppose it'll last, Anne? I want to know." "I dare say it will," said Anne gravely. "You are a handsome boy, Davy." Marilla looked volumes of disapproval. "But you must live up to it and be just as nice and gentlemanly as you look to be. And you told Minnie May Berry the other day when you found her crying 'cause someone said she was ugly, that if she was nice and kind and loving, people wouldn't mind her looks," said Davy discontentedly. "Seems to me you can't get out of being good in this world for some reason or another. You just have to behave." "Don't you want to be good?" asked Marilla, who had learned a great deal but had not yet learned the futility of asking such questions. "Yes, I want to be good, but not too good," said Davy cautiously. "You don't have to be very good to be a Sunday school superintendent. Mr. Bell's that, and he's a real bad man." "Indeed he's not," said Marilla indignantly. "He is. He says he is himself," asseverated Davy. "He said it when he prayed in Sunday school last Sunday. He said he was a vile worm and a miserable sinner and guilty of the blackest iniquity." "What did he do that was so bad, Marilla? Did he kill anybody or steal the collection cents? I want to know." Fortunately, Mrs. Lynde came driving up the lane at this moment, and Marilla made off, feeling that she had escaped from the snare of the fowler, and wished devoutly that Mr. Bell were not quite so highly figurative in his public petitions, especially in the hearing of small boys who were always wanting to know. Anne, left alone in her glory, walked with a will. The floor was swept, the beds made, the hens fed, the muslin dress washed and hung out on the line, Then Anne prepared for the transfer of feathers. She mounted to the garret and donned the first old dress that came to hand, a navy blue cashmere she had worn at 14. It was decidedly on the short side and as skimpy as the notable wincey Anne had worn upon the occasion of her debut at Green Gables, but at the least it would not be materially injured by down and feathers. Injured by... Oops, I just said that. Anne completed her toilet by tying a big red and white spotted handkerchief that had belonged to Matthew over her head, and thus something like made up, betook herself to the kitchen chamber, whither Marilla, before her departure, had helped her carry the feather bed. A cracked mirror hung by the chamber window, and in an unlucky moment Anne looked into it. There were those 7 freckles on her nose, more rampant than ever, or so it seemed in the glare of light from the unshaded window. Oh, I forgot to rub that lotion on last night, she thought. I'd better run down to the pantry and do it now. Anne had already suffered many things trying to remove these freckles. On one occasion, the entire skin had peeled off her nose, but the freckles remained. A few days previously, she had found a recipe for a freckle lotion in a magazine, and as the ingredients were within her reach, she straightway compounded it, much to the disgust of Marilla, who thought that if Providence had placed freckles on your nose, it was your own bounden duty to leave them there. Anne scurried down to the pantry, which always dim from the big willow growing close to the window was now almost dark by reason of the shade drawn to exclude flies. Anne caught the bottle containing the lotion from the shelf and copiously anointed her nose therewith by means of a little sponge sacred to the purpose. This important duty done, she returned to her work. Anyone who has ever shifted feathers from one tick to another will not need to be told that when Anne finished, she was a sight to behold. Her dress was white with down and fluff. Oh, come on. Self. Down and fluff, down and fluff. Where'd you go? Okay. And her front hair, escaping from under the handkerchief, was adorned with a veritable halo of feathers. At this auspicious moment, a knock sounded at the kitchen door. That must be Mr. Shearer, thought Anne. I'm in a dreadful mess, but I'll have to run down as I am, for he's always in a hurry. Down flew Anne to the kitchen door. If ever a charitable floor did open to swallow up a miserable, befeathered damsel, the Green Gables porch should promptly have engulfed Annie at that moment. On the doorstep were standing Priscilla Grant, golden and fair in silk attire, a short, stout, gray-haired lady in a tweed suit, and another lady, tall, stately, wonderfully gowned, with a beautiful, hybrid face and large, black-lashed, violet eyes, whom Anne instinctively felt, as she would have said in her earlier days, to be Mrs. Charlotte E. Morgan. In the dismay of the moment, one thought stood out from the confusion of Anne's mind, and she grasped at it as the proverbial straw. All Mrs. Morgan's heroines were noted for arising to the occasion. No matter what their troubles were, they invariably rose to the occasion and showed their superiority over all ills of time, space, and quantity. and therefore felt it was her duty to rise to the occasion. And she did so perfectly that Priscilla afterward declared she never admired Anne Shirley more than at that moment. And surely more than at that moment. No matter what her outraged feelings were, she did not show them. She greeted Priscilla and was introduced to her companions as calmly and composedly as if she had been arrayed in purple and fine linen. To be sure, it was somewhat of a shock to find that the lady she had instinctively felt to be Mrs. Morgan was not Mrs. Morgan at all, but an unknown Mrs. Pendexter, while the stout little gray-haired woman was Mrs. Morgan. But in the greater shock, the lesser lost its power. Anne ushered her guests to the spare room and thence into the parlor, where she left them while she hastened out to help Priscilla unharness her horse. "It's dreadful to come upon you so unexpectedly as this," apologized Priscilla, "but I did not know till last night that we were coming. Aunt Charlotte is going away Monday, and she had promised to spend today with a friend in town, but last night her friend telephoned her to tell her not to come, for they were quarantined for scarlet fever. So I suggested we come here instead, for I knew you were longing to see her. We called at the White Sands Hotel and brought Mrs. Poindexter with us. She's a friend of Aunt's and lives in New York, and her husband is a millionaire. We can't stay very long, for Mrs. Poindexter has to be back at the hotel by 5 o'clock. Several times while they were putting away the horse, Anne caught Priscilla looking at her in a furtive, puzzled way. She needn't stare at me so, Anne thought, a little resentfully. If she doesn't know what it is to change a feather bed, she might imagine it. When Priscilla had gone to the parlor, and before Anne could escape upstairs, Diana walked into the kitchen. Anne caught her astonished friend by the arm. "Diana Barry, who do you suppose is in that parlor at this very moment?" "Mrs. Charlotte E. Morgan, and a New York millionaire's wife. And here I am like this, and not a thing in the house for dinner but a cold ham bone, Diana." By this time Anne had become aware that Diana was staring at her in precisely the same bewildered fashion as Priscilla had done. It was really too much. And guys, I must stop there so I don't start slurring my words and all that stuff. Sorry it's taken me part ones and part twos to get through these, but they're pretty lengthy sometimes. Anyway, today's Thursday, so not online not no lives or anything today, but I'm sure I'll probably see you around in other people's live chats. And if not, we'll see you tomorrow at live. Let's make sure this is still going live at 5. So have your drink and if you're going to work on something, your project ready to work on. And I'm going to try dyeing some more today, but I'm going to record that and save it for, I think, next Wednesday. Those hat blanks, yeah, and try those. Wish the sun would come out, though. It's still awful cloudy here, but at least no rain. Knock on wood. Okay, y'all have a great day. Bye-bye. Be sweet. Don't be ugly. Love you.